Good morning, sir. I want you to follow one upcoming event. There is something called Dr. Ambedkar International Conference, which is, I think, to be held in the next week, somewhere from 21st to 23rd of August. If at all somebody is from waving me or somebody else. Generally, if such events and conferences, if they are held in your own city, I mean in the city where you are residing, we recommend the students to attend such conferences. Basically, those are the places where from you get a high volume of relevant material for your exam. Finally, whether we go with the acceptance or rejection of their ideas and their concepts, etc., that's the material of, you will be able to have on hand a lot of good stuff. This is one. And there is also some news about Center for Dalit Studies that is going to be established in Hyderabad. Center for Dalit Studies. So you look for the prospect in that. Maybe what are the things that they really want to do. Is it purely going to be academic in orientation or any particular projects they are going to take up. So this, I think, if you are following, you will be able to get some information. Two I told you. One is Ambedkar International Conference. The second one is Center for Dalit Studies. The conference is in Bangalore. But I'm sure we'll be able to get good amount of material. If at all you belong to that place, 2 दिन के लिए जा सकते हो. You घर का एक visit भी हो जाता है. Then you can. Somehow when such conferences are held, we don't see people from that very city attending. People from, all the way from Australia or Africa, they will be there. But for people from the same city, it will be more or less like a curfew there. You don't even want to look at that place. So, आज क्या करना है? We will have to write about culture, personality, school. Certain things I must not have spoken of also I will be mentioning. But before that, one small topic I want you to read from Ember. There is a topic towards the rare side of the book with a title such as Sex, Gender and Culture. Sex, Gender and Culture. Now, though many of you must have heard of these terms, I thought I would inform you about gender, the basic idea in social sciences, because this was one of the things of interest for Margaret Mead. I don't want to elaborate in a big way there, because the topics are still to come in the future. These two, gender and sex, they can be seen as one that is a biological aspect, the other is a psychological aspect. Because of primary sexual characters, primary physical characters or secondary physical characters, the sex of the individual might be decided. But then in spite of being belonging to one particular sex, an individual feels that he is something else. Then comes the discussion such as transgenders or intergenders, etc. Those issues we will be discussing when we talk about chromosomal aberrations and related topics. Right now you understand that gender is more a psychological entity, and there is something to do with the sociology in gender. Meaning that when you are trying to fix roles for specific sex in the society, that is generally seen as a view of gender of that culture group. When I repeat what I said. To the biological, physiological entity, if you are trying to attach a sociological, psychological orientation, then we refer to it as a gender. So when I say gender, you need not necessarily be belonging to that particular sex. From society to society, if you observe, role specification may be based on the gender. So when we are when we are studying topics such as division of labor, most of the societies come up with this age-based division of labor and sex-based division of labor will be there. But this sex-based division of labor is not uniform throughout. Meaning, what is the role that is assigned to a particular sex is not same in all the societies. But then you remember, sir, I was telling you in the other class when I was introducing the term of moiety, whenever there is a division in the society, the division somewhere will take us to a hierarchy. Unless otherwise there is a difference in the characteristics, unless otherwise there is something like a difference in the level of them in the society, there will not be a there will not be a classification. So when they are classifying based on gender or sex, what we mean is there is definitely some kind of a hierarchy. See, I was talking about these terms because Margaret Mead was studying 3 different culture groups in Papua New Guinea region. She found there in those 3 societies that the role played by the male and female respectively varied based on various other circumstances. In one society which she calls Chamboli, T is silent there. In a society called Chamboli, she mentions that male and female behave in a manner that is generally unconventional. Male and female generally behave in a manner that is unconventional. When she is saying unconventional, what she means is she is looking for certain generally accepted traits for the male, certain traits for the female. One characteristic she closely examines is aggression. Aggression she sees as a characteristic that has to be held by a male. So if she says that there is an unconventional behavior of male and female in that society, so there is a reversal of the characteristics, reversal of the role also. So female is more aggressive, and even in terms of the responsibilities in the household or in the society, there is a reversal there. Whatever is generally seen as economic pursuit is generally seen as the male's foray. That becomes the female's responsibility there. Housekeeping, child rearing, etc., this becomes a male's responsibility. She uses one word to describe a male in that society. She calls him henpecked. Henpecked. So it is actually in this context I wanted to bring those 2 terms, gender and sex. So in the meantime you can keep studying from Ember casually. Don't put your heart there. Where you will have to put heart, you put. But here this is a casual reading. We'll see what kind of questions can be asked. We'll move on to writing about this particular topic, that is culture, personality, school or psychological anthropology. Culture, personality, school or psychological anthropology. The emergence of this school strengthened its interdisciplinary nature. And brought anthropology once again close to psychology. Write in the brackets there for your own understanding. In certain European universities, take it as a note, in certain European universities, culturology, the predecessor of anthropology, existed as a branch of psychology. Continue writing in the bracket. With increasing interest in culture studies, and increasing diversity in the content, the discipline could not be accommodated in psychology, which was more or less a discipline studying the individual. Close the bracket. This branch or school examines the relation between individual's personality and the culture to which the individual belongs. The scholars in the school are found to have both anthropologists and psychologists as their mentors, due to which application of concepts can be seen, application of the concepts can be seen from both the sides. In classical psychology, Individual was the focus. Individual was the focus. The culture personality school, the culture personality school treats culture groups as individuals. In this context, concepts such as write in quotes, national character studies emerged. Based on the premise that every person learns different things, which leads to different thinkings, the school had put forth its ideas on culture. According to Benedict, difference in thinking results in difference in questions an individual asks, and difference in answers. The school believes that, write in quotes, the trouble with life is not that there is no answer, but it is that there are too many answers. Unquote. It is here the influence of Franz Boas is obvious. Where the thinkers recognize the diversity and uniqueness of cultures, right in the next paragraph. With regard to origins of the school, 1920s had seen the first emergence of studying individual and group related behavioral aspects, in anthropology that are based on anthropological fieldworks. Right in the brackets. Protagonists of classical evolutionism present Taylor's studies to be the originators of studying mind of the primitive man. Continue in the bracket. They were largely based on rethinking methods and hardly had discussions related to influence of culture and personality on each other. The life of the school, bracket closed there, the life of the school hardly lasted for about 40 years. As 1960s saw the emergence of schools like symbolism, in American anthropology. Right in the next paragraph. Based on continents, culture personality school is generally considered to be the given of American anthropology. It can be considered as a reaction to classical evolutionism. For classical evolutionists, human behavior is the outcome of nature, and they propagated, right in quotes, a predetermined future, unquote, through three stages of evolution. Apart from the traditional criticisms, against classical evolutionists, culture personality school was primarily critical of the concept of psychic unity of mankind. Psychic unity of mankind. They tried to introduce several fieldwork techniques to substantiate their points of view. Right in the next paragraph. The school propagated three types of studies or viewpoints to explain the relation between culture and personality. Firstly, Ruth Benedict examines the influence of personality on culture through her theory of, right in quotes, culture patterns. Secondly, according to Margaret Mead, culture shapes the personality. This led to national character studies. Thirdly, Gardiner, right in the brackets, Cora Dubo, Gardiner, Cora Dubo, and Ralph Linton propounded that culture shapes personality. Which in turn influences culture. Continue writing there under Gardiner. To explain this, Gardiner had put forth the concept of basic personality, along with Linton. It was modified by Cora Dubo as model personality. As model personality. Right aside here. Contributions of Benedict. Contributions of Ruth Benedict. So two things I want to tell here. One which is very, very important is maintain your attendance in the class. Later you should not come and say that, no, I was not there, and hence kind of things. If you are not there, you are not my responsibility. Second thing is, I want to do something else. Yeah, I will be sending you most probably by today evening the schedule of the tests. We will be starting from 22nd of this month. I have given the dates up to 21st of October. On the 21st of October, you will be having two tests. Those are the comprehensive tests on the same day. So second thing is, do not miss your tests. I am not responsible for that too. And thirdly, I repeat what I said if you haven't listened to me. Because test is something that you generally do not want to listen to. 22nd of July we are going to start, irrespective of whether you have studied or not, because the burden of reading and understanding you will be mine. Many times you don't understand what you have written, but being an evaluator, we will have to make out something, decipher something from what you have written. So from 22nd you are going to have tests irrespective of whether you have prepared or not, whether the test is going to be there in the class or you are asked to write back home, you will have to write and submit to me. Third, and this is one query that has been coming up from quite a number of students, that it is becoming difficult to refer to the textbooks and do things. First and foremost, you be thorough with what you're doing in the class. That is very, very important. After having finished what is given to you in that, and today I will be sending you the first material related mail. 2 or 3 topics will reach you in the PDFs. So you would be doing something like this. Apart from the regular material that you are writing in the class, the first other thing that you will study is the material posted to you. So textbooks come as a third level of source. वहां तक अगर आपका दम बाकी है तो, no? So first and foremost is your class notes. Second will be your printed notes, your mail topics. Third will be your printed note. Fourth will be your textbook. वो तो last का ही है. Everything put together will be your actual preparation. Textbooks, we are never asking you to do cover to cover, only a few things like, some tribal profiles I was asking you to read. Certain things because they are interesting to you, sex and gender, I was asking you to read from a text. वो textbook आपके पास नहीं भी हो तो आज खोज कर निकालोगे, and then you would want to read what is there in that. So those are the kind of interesting topics which I ask you to read from the textbooks. Otherwise, so first will be your class notes. That has to be done on a daily basis. Second will be the soft copies that I will be posting to you. Third will be the printed note. I think tomorrow or day after you will be getting your printed note. Don't mind the spelling errors. No? How many spelling errors from you I am bearing? So, not that, no, but somehow, ho jata hai. So, don't ignore the spelling things. And after that, A student was also asking me, why don't you say that you stick to the class notes? I won't say. Anyways, sir. लिखिए. Benedict was a student of Bowers. Benedict was a student of Bowers. And the first trained a women anthropologist. First trained women anthropologist. She views culture as a discrete entity, and an integrated whole. Right in the brackets. The study of culture as an interdependent set of culture traits seem to be similar to classical evolutionists and Malinowski. Bracket close. The idea of culture as a discrete entity gives culture personality school and Benedict an anthropological orientation of respecting the uniqueness. Continue writing in the same paragraph. She postulated that every culture is integrated in a specific pattern, and this pattern is determined by the personality of individuals that constitute the culture. Read that statement to yourselves. Every culture is integrated in a specific pattern, and that pattern is determined by personality of individuals that constitute the culture. Right in the brackets there. In this context, individuals can be looked at as individual culture traits. Now you can fit in the whole thing. Several culture traits put together becomes that culture or culture complex, etc. Thus, according to her, culture is a magnified form of individual personalities. Underline that statement. Culture is a magnified form of individual personalities. In her book, write in quotes, Patterns of Culture, patterns of culture. Benedict presented an account of three societies and examined how personality influences culture. Sir, occasionally there is a repetition, don't mind. Number one. In Zuni of northern Mexico, she found that people are cooperative, disciplined, and submissive. She calls this culture, right in quotes, Apollonian pattern. She calls this culture Apollonian pattern. Apollonian pattern. By borrowing terms from Latin and Greek literature. These characteristics of Zuni culture at an individual level are found as people giving little importance to individual centric ceremonies such as initiation ceremonies. You understand initiation ceremony, no? Initiation ceremony is something like when you are entering a particular stage of life. So you are entering adolescence, there would be certain ceremonies of initiation. Or you are entering a marital life, you have a set of ceremonies. So whenever you are being initiated into the next stage of life, you have one particular ceremony. The entire world should come to know that yes, I am going to get married. So from now, this is going to be my status. That's very important. The entire society has to know in which cultural stage you are. So initiation ceremonies, birth rituals, marriages, etc. They are examples. It reminds me of something. Which is a more important ceremony or occasion, birth or death?
They are equally important.
You cannot have one without the other. This is altogether opening a Pandora's box again. Or maybe we are talking about that culture when he says both are important, there cannot be one without the other. Meaning that maybe death is important so that you can be born again. Is it that? Do you mean that?
The other way around. Birth is important.
Birth is important so that you die.
Once you are born, you have to die.
Puttinavadu gittaka tappadu.
Not the other way around. Not Swarupati
దాన్నెలే పర్యాయ పదం వాడాము. Say again.
Yeah, so once you are born, you have to die. I'm not sure about once you die, you will be reborn again or not. That I'm not sure. But because you are born,
You'll have to die.
And hence both are equally important.
It looks slightly interesting. Because you'll have to die, you'll have to be born. No, you might not have meant it that way. Which is important, birth or death, is once again a cultural thing. Most of the societies mourn death. There was one Mexican society called Konu, K-O-N-U. I love that society, so I am telling you this story. Not that it is so very important for your exam. It gives another dimension towards death. For Konu, death is very important. For them, the life on the earth is very small. Life after death is a longer one, much longer one, till eternity. Their habitations are a reflection of importance they give to the afterlife. The houses where they live when they are alive. The sentence is interesting actually. The houses where they live when they are alive are very simple, no more than thatched houses. But the houses where they live after death are the graves, they are palatious. Generally, they prefer to bury their dead in the backyard of their house. But then if you look at their structures, the houses of the living individuals seem to be in the front yard of the graveyards. Because you see that graves are so very palatious, and in front of the graves you are living actually. There's something much more interesting there. They cherish the relation with their dead. They more or less permanently maintain their relationship with the dead, in a way that the graves are never permanently closed. The graves are never permanently closed. There is something like a sliding door there. And all the important occasions are celebrated in the presence of the dead. So when there is a harvest, there is a birth, or there is some kind of festival, you cook for them and then go talk to them. They are there for you. So it's not simply the body they are looking at. The souls are also there. So whenever there is an occasion, there is an opportunity, darwaza khol diya, batiyana shuru kar diya, and then you are spending hours with the dead fellow, who finally would have to get up and say, enough is enough, you close the door, I want some rest, kind of a thing. Just imagine that happens. If it is you and me, we would die on the spot. But if it is a Konu, for him, oh thank God you had spoken to me finally, kind of a thing. So what is more important, death or birth, is culturally defined again. Write down, sir, we were there somewhere. The second one, Quakitul. Quakitul, you know the spelling? Quakitul of Western Canada. Quakitul of Western Canada are ambitious and striving with emphasis on individuality. Benedict calls them Dionysian. Benedict calls them Dionysian. It is referred to in the way they have grand celebrations attached to marriage and other celebrations of passage from one stage of life to the other, passage from one stage of life to the other, and the intense struggle for power. Thirdly, intense struggle for power. Thirdly, Dobu, D-O-B-U, Dobu of Melanesia. Dobu of Melanesia. Dobu, D-O-B-U, of Melanesia are characterized by fear, lack of trust, and hatred, resulting in elaborate magico-religious practices. Right in the next paragraph. Benedict sparingly resorted to detailed data collection from these societies. She depended on a high amount of extrapolation of information. Extrapolation of information. Nevertheless, in the study of a Japanese society, she used, right in quotes, distant content analysis method, where geographically and temporally distant cultures can be studied. Continue writing there. When she was employed by the U.S. Office of War, to study the enemy, she resorted to interviewing prisoners of war, Japanese immigrants in USA, detailed study of historical documents, available ethnographs, art forms, life histories, etc., to arrive at significant conclusions about Japanese society. She presented them in the book The Chrysanthemum and the Sword. She presented them in her book The Chrysanthemum and the Sword, 1946. This novel started a new practice of anthropologists using a tertiary method to study extinct cultures. She examined the difference in the individual's behavior in the Japanese culture when they are subjected to specific social contexts. This, in the later times, became a subject matter in linguistic anthropology. Under the title Social Context of Use of Language. Look at your syllabus, chapter 7, paper 1. There is this topic there, social context of use of language. I'm going slow in dictation, don't miss any words. That's a normal thing people say. When you're dictating, we are losing certain words or sentences or paragraphs or pages, whatever. Here and there, if you are losing a few words, you can sit and write, not an issue. Social context of use of language. This is a big question for the current exam. It is generally asked for about 15 marks or 20 marks. At that point of time, we will be examining how in different social conditions you use a variant of your own language. A variant of your own language. Are you with me, sir? All of you. I was saying that Benedict was trying to see how in the Japanese society individuals' behavior was different in different social contexts. meaning that on the one hand they stand for gentleness and perfection. On the other hand, they are known for the ferocious nature. See, on the surface it looks that these two are two extremely diverse and different entities. But then if you look at the undercurrents there is an interconnectedness. There is an interconnectedness. Because in the process of enculturation, they are trained to behave in a particular way in particular circumstances. Your behavior with your enemy definitely should be different from your behavior with your family or the in-group. And this in the later days, in a modified form, that we see in your syllabus as social context of use of language. Very interesting things we are going to see there. That what kind of words that you generally use in the presence of your respectful elders, when compared to the slang, the words that you use when you're there in the private with your friends. I know you remember so many things now. Everything matters. It is not simply the verbal language, even the body language. Of course, the way you behave with your elder is also subject to maybe the generation. I think gone are the days when the children would feel awkward to sit with the crossed legs in front of the parents. I mean, this is not the generation where we still expect the young fellows to stand up from their seating positions when an elder walks in, or when your father walks into your room. Or does your father walk into your room without knocking at the door? I don't think so. In the respectful household, knocking at the door is considered to be a decent thing. You shall not be walking into the private premises of, even if they are children. You will have to knock at the door and walk in. That is a respectful parent. If you are being respectful in that sense, the child will also be respectful. I don't know how you watch TV in front of your father, legs stretched out, the feet pointing towards his face, or the swinging feet there. I don't know. You just look at your own position in front of him. This is one of the social contexts, basically. We are going to see what kind of language and slang that you use in your formal meetings, in your informal setup kind of things. There we are going to also examine. In volumes also we'll try to measure what is the talking capacity of male and female, and the situation and listening capacity of the male and female. Higher is the talking capacity of the female, lesser is the listening capacity of the male. So that's where we are going to see where there is more meaningful talk. Generally, over a period of time, you try to come to an understanding that anyway she's a talking fellow. So you stop judging what is important, what is unimportant. Because everything goes in the same flow. What is important, what is unimportant, that goes in the same flow. So you miss out several significant ones also. No? We'll see what significant ones you'll lose. Keep writing, sir. There somewhere. తెలుగు వస్తుంది కదా ఆ పారాగ్రాఫ్ చదువుకోండి మెల్లిగా తర్వాత అర్థం అవుతుంది. Right decided. Contributions of Margaret Mead. Contributions of Margaret Mead. She was a student of Benedict and Bowes. A student of Benedict and Bowes. It's not that Benedict was taking huge number of classes for her. It's not that way. Sometimes, even a simple guideline from a senior fellow can make them your teachers. So it was something like this. When Mead had started doing her PhD, Benedict was finishing her PhD. So a senior there. So definitely in the pursuit of finishing her PhD, she must have given a few lectures to this young girl. And then she pampered her, she took her along with her in several studies. That's how she was a co-author in the Chrysanthemum and the Sword. Okay? Not that this is a very grand old lady, and that reminds me of something. When I started teaching anthropology for UPSC, I was around 21 years. So when I started writing the exam and started teaching for the UPSC anthropology, it was one and the same age. And I could see that I had highly grown-up children in the class. I mean, my children were older to me. So a definite occasion of getting bullied also. I have to recall one particular phase on that occasion. I remember one of my teachers who had asked me to deliver certain lectures of anthropology to a crowd. I mean, that was the first occasion where I was going to address a big crowd. There were about 250, 300 fellows there. And I could notice that in the crowd there used to be one fellow sitting just in the middle. And generally, when you are talking to a crowd, an eye contact is something that is very important. So in the process, I'll have to see everybody. So whenever I used to turn like this and turn like this, he would wink. Don't know the intention. So I told him one day, maybe you visit a doctor. Maybe there's something wrong with the eye. And after that he started sitting, of course, in the last bench. So 30 years industry andi man kind of. Right now. Mead believed that culture influences individual personalities. Culture influences individual personalities, especially through the enculturation process. The enculturation process. She studied Samoa. And wrote The Coming of Age in Samoa. The Coming of Age in Samoa in 1928. Her principal area of interest was to examine how children were responding to adolescence Are you fine? Can I? And found that Samoan girls had more stable personalities and were peaceful compared to those in the mainstream American society. Mainstream American society. The reason for this personality trait according to Mead was that the Samoans discussed facts of birth, death and sex with their children right from an early age. Premarital sex was considered natural. But in the American society of Mead, she found conflicting standards of values, especially in the matters of sex. This led to personalities marked by stress, and lack of faith. Thus, she concludes that culture has a profound influence on personality. Trust is something that is very much important. Trust, faith, belief, they're not one and the same. They are two different entities. We're not getting into those English differences between them. But the tip here is, whatever is happening behind you, have a trust. If you don't have a trust there, you will not have a peaceful sleep, at least for your own benefit. And always believe, I love this. In this dictum, that leave it. If the love belongs to you, it will come back. Otherwise, let it go. If not this love, you will have another love. Don't worry much about, don't be too very selfish in the matters of love. My wife only for myself, my husband only for myself. Be a little more broad-minded, kind of a thing. You will have a very peaceful life out there, right? To prove her point, don't think that I am teaching you to be unethical, because you see too many ethical talks in the other classes. When and where will we talk something right from our heart? See, every heart asks for more. As I was saying, dil mange more. Even if you cannot get it, you at least think and imagine of getting it. Right on. So it's the class of fantasies rather. To prove her point, she presented, give me a minute. She presented the studies of, note the three societies, Maybe I should increase the font, I don't know. Arapesh, A-R-A-P-E-S-H. Arapesh. Mondugamore, I'll write down for the last benches. I was mentioning this name earlier also, Chamboli. Arapesh, Mondugamore and Chamboli. Her area of study was the behavior of men and women. The behavior of men and women across different culture groups. This aspect of gender specific behavior and gender roles were to do with enculturation. In her book, Sex and Temperament in Three Primitive Societies. Sex and Temperament in Three Primitive Societies. She wrote, right in quotes, in the Arapesh, men and women act as we, right in quotes, the Westerners. I repeat, in the Arapesh, men and women act as we, the Westerners, generally expect them to act. That is, women behave in a mild, parental, responsive way, and men are relatively aggressive. In Mondugamore, men are more aggressive. In Mondugamore, men are more aggressive to the extent of being fearful, dominating, and are in an effort of proving themselves. Thirdly, in Chamboli, there is a role reversal. With men being docile and women being aggressive. there are stereotypes generally. Maybe I will have to make a mention of this. We, on most of the occasions, mention marriage as this. I told you earlier also, this is something that's a big question mark. Who is more equal? That's a big question. In most of the paternalistic societies, it is that outwardly. But what might happen could be that this is something that is a desirable behavior in the public. This is desirable in private. You cannot actually say no to either of them. Both are desirable. So a balance you will try to show somewhere, at least in the book, that it is that. Sir, in the book of Ember, in the topic related to food getting and economic subsistence methods, there he gives evolution of economic subsistence methods. In that topic he talks about in what kind of societies women's role is much more significant, where importance of women is more compared to the others. So a picture something like this he gives. Hunting, gathering, to fishing, to pastoral, to horticulture or primitive agriculture, to agriculture and industry. This is the role of women. A role of women and the respect that you give. In the horticulture societies, the woman is considered to be having the best of her position when compared to the rest of them. And when you go to industrial societies, you see the role, the respect that the woman gets is on the negative side. If you read his arguments, that brings out maybe the reality. Definitely you may say that in the industrial societies women are earning sometimes much more than the male fellows earn. Poor fellow, he is into civil services, you are into the other jobs. More than 4 times the earning there. So many women's organizations being functional. So much of writing about the rights of women there. But he says, he makes it a point here when he's drawing this graph. I'm not saying that in horticulture societies, women are superior to men. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying this. I'm only talking about the relative positions of women. What was women's position here? What was women's position here or there? There is one underlying theme that doesn't change. That is, through throughout in all the economic systems, by default, man is superior to women, but it is only that her relative position changes. I really do not want to comment on who should be more or whether they should be equal. That's not the area of discussion today. If time permits, you listen to this lady on TED Talks called Bharadwaj. First name I am not able to recall. There is one lady called Bharadwaj. There is a TED Talk where she speaks about men, the forgotten gender. Men, the forgotten gender. She is actually a men's activist. We generally hear of activists for the women, but this is a lady who is fighting the cause of the men. So we'll have to understand. See, there are certain expectations from men. There are some expectations from men. You're not supposed to cry right from the childhood. You're not supposed to cry. Girls are supposed to cry. You're supposed to be strong fellows. You're not supposed to talk about the pain that you have. What she is trying to examine in her talk is how the society that has been talking about and coming up with several women-centered legislations have been doing a lot of damage to the poor, innocent men. The rest of the community have taken this innocent lot for a ride. So she has started one organization, Men Protection Society. And I'm sure one day you will see the branches of this organization in all the cities and gali mein naam hoga. Men Protection Society. So it is on that occasion I want you to prepare one answer for your general studies also. Write down. The question you write down, you can attempt it at your comfort. Comment on the need of gender neutral legislations. We will indulge in that talk sometime later, because there are certain legislations that you will have to prepare, not simply for your GS, for your optional also. This is an omnibus question where you are going to evaluate how various the so-called gender non-neutral legislations have been working, whether they are working in favor of certain men, certain women, whether there is a requirement that somewhere the so-called women-centered legislations have to be curbed. You will have to be separately preparing on legislation such as Domestic Violence Act and then Dowry Prohibition Act. You will have to write separate note on them. Domestic Violence Act is something that is very close to my heart. Because my own couple of students were victims of that. One of my students actually was, I'll have to say this, I feel very bad to say this on this platform, from this platform. Not simply that he was a victim of it, he had to be behind the bars for some time. But it is like, he was narrating that my life is like, before the bars and after the bars, before he entered and after he came out. So he says that he has got so much of gyan behind there. And he says, I could establish so many newer relations from there. He started to see the life from the other side. He says that I'm not the same person. Of course, he was into a love marriage, and then she said she had put up this case against him. The reason I'm not really not bothered about the truth behind the case. But then what is interesting is the kind of experiences of life that he was narrating. I was asking him to come over and talk to the students once. And then he says, no, ab jitna mera izzat ka wo hona tha to ho gaya. You shouldn't be doing this to me. This is the last thing that I expect from you. Just because I left UPSC, you cannot take me for a task like this. But then, you listen to her talk. Bharadwaj, I'm sure you'll love and you'll start contributing to that society also. Make a note, sir. I'm also an activist there. I'm also an activist there. So that's the reason why I say my heart beats for the men. Kind of. Right now. To complement her studies, Mead started the use of information gathered from videos and audios, and photographs that led to the development of, right in quotes, visual anthropology. Her most important contribution was national character studies. According to her, individuals of a nation can be reduced to some basic similar characteristics. Based on this, one can draw the personality of a nation. Initially, these studies were used to know about the enemy nations, and their cultures, especially during the World War II, full stop. Today, in the era of globalization, national character studies are used by the developed nations and business organizations to understand their potential markets, trading partners, to enhance their business opportunities and developing relations with the other nations. Right in the next paragraph. Mead had also introduced a new method in ethnographies. New method in ethnographies, that is a re-study method. A re-study method. It is to examine the continuity and change. Examine the continuity and change in the formation of cultural characters and individual personalities. It involves revisiting the culture group and recording the changes that took place during the time gap. Can you give me an example of any study that can be called some ethnograph with re-study method? It was not his own. Somebody else had done, you are visiting. You must have visited a place, you visited again after a time gap, so that you... Anything that we have mentioned in the class? Khasa tribe, great. Khasa by D.N. Majumdar. Good. That was a re-study method. Sir, there are two here. A word about the difference between basic personality and model personality. Then I will take you forth. Let's see to what extent we'll be able to write. In yesterday's class, we had seen this with regard to Gardiner. He was not happy with both the ladies. One lady was saying that individual personalities make culture. The other lady was saying that individuals are actually the products of culture. He says that it has to be both. After the class, somebody was asking about institutions. The word institutions had come in our classes earlier with regard to Malinowski. But how Malinowski was using the word institutions was different from how Gardiner was using. For Malinowski, institutions is a cultural response to the fulfillment of individual's needs. Individual has certain needs. In order to fulfill the needs, cultures come up with the establishment of certain institutions. And there he gives some kind of a structure to the institution. What happens in the institution? There is something like a plan or a charter that you have. And in order to execute or attain that charter, you would be having some manpower, some material apparatus, some norms to be followed, and through that you would be indulging in some activities so that the function of the institution is fulfilled. That's how it is looked at as. This is a different one. Don't compare those institutions with these. Gardiner is categorizing social institutions, cultural institutions into two. One he calls primary institutions, the other are secondary institutions. Primary are those that make the individual. Primary institutions are those that are responsible for bringing a particular kind of personality to the individuals. Maybe we are talking a lot about nurture here. Based on the way you are nurturing the child, the kind of personality comes up. I really don't know whether our parents were doing such a great research when they were rearing us. If you could recall your childhood, were they reading books, looking at internet, doing a lot of research, how to grow children, kind of. Those were the time where families were child manufacturing entities. Each family was having tons of them, dozens of them. I remember my own grandfather, maternal side. He had 2 wives, one after the other. The first wife had 1 son and a daughter. It's like hum do hamare do. She could have produced more, but she died. Second wife was doing a tremendous job for the lineage. She had given about 8 daughters and 1 son. So all put together, 9 daughters and 2 sons, 10, 2 short of a dozen. That reminds me of another family in my relatives. That couple had 23 children. I don't know whom to appreciate. After having produced 23, maybe the father understood that abhi bahut ho gaya. Because when he's giving, you can't say no. The 24th child was named Baskarallah. 23rd child. And when you are pleading to the God, it takes some time for him to listen to you and accept. After 23rd, there was one more. 23rd was Baskarallah. After that, one more Allah had come. Such a magnificent task they were into. But these days, there's so much of research that is happening on child rearing. Now, he says primary institutions are those that are actually responsible for the molding of the basic personality. So, when you say basic personality, that was the concept given by Gardiner. According to him, this refers to a larger homogeneity that occurs in a population, in a culture group. A larger homogeneity that occurs in a population, in a culture group, in terms of the personalities. So if you are reared in particular kind of culture groups, in particular environment, you would be one particular type of a person. That's what is the basic personality. Having these basic personality traits, you have the possibility of giving rise to some kinds of other social institutions. That's what is the way he looks at it. If the question is model personality was the concept given by Cora Dubo. She was calling it model personality because she says these are the traits that I could study, I could establish based on the tests that I am conducting. See, it's a rarity that you conduct tests on the humans. That too behavioral tests. Something like a big boss thing. That was the last thing that I was expecting from Junior NTR. If you have no movies to do, I love this young man. I love all men. That's a different thing. But then this was the last thing that I was expecting. Anyways, I'm waiting for the big boss to come. Model personality of Cora Dubo is the one that she was identifying from the test that she was doing. There's something that is interesting here. For the first time, something like psychometric tests were used in anthropology. All the days before, people were talking about psychometry, that I was influenced by psychometry, but no tests were there. It is here that I can recall something for you from your childhood. There are so many things that you were doing in the leisure. When teacher was coming late, interval था, बहुत कुछ करते थे. One of the things that you were doing was pick up a paper, उस पे ink झिड़को ऐसे, and then you fold it, you open it, you get some kind of a picture, and then you start interpreting that picture. You must have done this. And this is one thing that looks similar to some of you must have appeared at the armed services exams, CDSC kind of things. There you have a test, something like a picture perception test. So two young men are there, then one is actually pointing a gun at you, at the other fellow. And then you will have to narrate a story. Based on how you are narrating a story, the kind of story that you are narrating, your personality is assessed. Meaning that from the ink blot test, we call it ink blot test. From the ink blot test, your personality can be judged. Similarly, there is one other kind of interpretation we used to make. Abhi to, in the urban areas, you don't see the sky at all. Hardly you get to see the sky. When it rains, you don't know that it was raining. Until the meteorological department had said that there was 10 centimeter rain. You never saw rain happening because it was happening on the roof. In the young days, when we used to see the sky, there were so many clouds there. And we used to interpret the clouds also. Some clouds were there looking like a horse, an elephant kind of a thing. You were doing this as children, as if we are taking you to... How many of you studied in government schools? Primary, upper primary schools. Very good. You are the people who have seen life. Because government schools are those that did not have boundary walls. Forget about boundary walls, there is no classroom also. We hardly have any classrooms. Most of the education happens under the trees. We call it Shantiniketan education. And most of the schools don't even have the blackboards. Forget about the teachers. We are our own teachers. So we play the teacher's role sometimes. I love to talk about my own school. One of the agency schools where I have studied, that neither had the walls for the boundary. It hardly had two classrooms to say. There was a competition every day. A competition who can hold the classroom for the day. So the class leader's role is very, very important. When I'm saying this, there are still schools existing of this kind. Once you are posted at some place, you should be able to see such kind of schools. Then you will recall this class. So we used to run for the classroom for the day. Booking has to be made. Karchif dalo pe. And those 4 blackboards that we used to have, whoever goes first, that class will have the blackboard for that day. Others, no, the teacher will say out things and then. In fact, studying under the trees, it will have its own fun. You'll have your own fun there. You can do a lot of writing in the... Teacher also jolly good having her time or his time. And one other very beautiful thing which you cannot actually think of in a private school or in an urban school, in a convent school, is having a beautiful pond filled with lotuses in the middle of your school. It's more or less like whenever you want to go swim, take a dip there. Ghar mein naha ke nahi aaya to chalo idhar naha lenge. You don't have time at home. Your mother didn't have a time to dress you up, so you're doing. And one other very beautiful thing is, when you have to celebrate some important day, jaisa ki New Year ho gaya, ya fir kuch aur ho gaya, now you just take a stroll into the jungle nearby, pick up some kind of flowers and some leaves, you make your own bouquet and gift it to the teacher. Abhi to aap kitna sara lagate ho paisa bouquet banane ke liye. The most painful thing we had seen in the school is lack of toilets. we could see that half the time girl students were absent because there is no toilet there. Even if there is a toilet, there is no water in there. I think these are the kinds of schools. That's the reason why some of us, the alumni, we are actually sponsoring the toilet there. I don't sponsor anything else. I look at the toilet. पढ़ाई तो हो जाएगी, toilet कहाँ रुकेगा? Now you will have to look at this. Drinking water can be some other thing. You can take care of drinking water, but toilet is something that's very much important. The other day I was actually watching one of these comedy shows. I don't remember the young man. He was saying that most of the time our parents say that, we have walked so many miles to the school. When he was making fun of it, I remember my own time. I am not somebody who came from so many generations ago from you. But it's only that I happened to stay in a very remote, a tribal area because of my father being posted there. And he didn't think of putting us in an urban area, having his own jolly good time there. I can actually recall walking several kilometers, I don't know how many. But I do remember that our house was there on one side of the village and then school was there on the other side, other extreme side. So every morning when we used to go to the school, it's like a caravan that gets added up. So I was the first one to start with my elder sister. Both of us, we used to collect children from all the schools. It's like, our job to fill the school. So we used to take all the children. In between there used to be a Ganesh temple. You have to visit the Ganesh temple, otherwise Ganesha will get angry. Jitna bhi paisa de sakte ho, ye paisa, do paisa, whatever, kind of, aap de do, fir aage badho. And then you are going to have some kind of, makeshift church in between. Aap unse bhi thoda sa salam kar lo, and then you go. There is one pain that always was sulking in my mind ever since my childhood. All through this journey, when people were visiting Ganesha, when people were visiting Christ, they didn't have a problem. But during the lunch hours, when I used to go to a dargah nearby, I was all alone to visit the dargah. Nobody would accompany. So I was the person who would take whatever kind of offerings there and there. I am not from a family where people go to dargah. But then when you are visiting so many other religious places, why not this particular place? I wanted to talk about this today because this is the kind of enculturation related class. Maybe right from the childhood, people were actually taught, this is your God, this is not your God. Or this is more docile God, this is a ferocious God. This is a good God, this is a bad God. You forget to teach your children that all gods are gods. I'm not saying here that all gods are equal. We are going to have those lectures also, that all religions are not one and the same. Religions look to be superficially similar, but you go to the details, every religion is different from one another. Maybe that as children, they already have understood that all religions are not one and the same. Sir, when you are posted out there, you just look for such kind of life. I remember one other agency area where we were posted. My father was posted. We were like, the school was a makeshift shandy. Where weekly, what we should say, Telugulo Santa antaru. Weekly market used to be there of selling the cow and other livestock. So it was like we had 2 holidays every week. One was a Sunday, the other was a Tuesday. Tuesday was, I never understood why that shandy has to be there on a Tuesday. Because 2 days I am losing of the school. But soon after Tuesday, meaning Wednesday, we had to go early to the school so that we could clear the whole thing there. Clear the cow dung and clear the whole thing, and then you make it that it looks like a school. I mean, if these are the kinds of schools that, then you are actually the people who studied in the heavens. I think most of you are the convent people who must not have heard that there is something of this kind can exist in the same country where you were actually growing up. There is a whole lot of humanity suffering there. I think those are the people who need you. Now coming to the basic personality, model personality thing, what Cora Dubov was doing was an interesting experiment. She took some children, which society and all will see while you're writing. See, she was trying to give an answer to people who always were saying that there is a perennial problem of dearth of factual information, dependable factual information. So if we are going back right to the early 19th century, when the classical evolutionist was writing, you always had a problem with him, you didn't visit the field. When Malinowski visited the field, you said that you are talking their voice. When Bowers was giving facts, you said that too many facts are there. So from such a circumstance, when these people were writing, the women started to visit very isolated islands, and she went all the way there, and then she was trying to give information. When initially Benedict was writing, people said that we can't believe because nobody had seen what you are writing. That's the reason why when Margaret Mead went, she took Kodak camera with her. She was giving the photographs. She started giving motion pictures also, so that she can substantiate the information. But still people are not happy. People say that no, you can actually choose from the pictures whatever is necessary for you, whatever suits your kind of study. We are not talking about a time when morphing could happen in the photographs and videos can be edited. But still there were complaints. The other thing Cora Dubov was trying to answer was that people were critical of the other culture personality thinkers, saying that you are doing everything. You are gathering the facts, you are analyzing them, and you are finally giving an interpreted story. Then what she did was, she had identified certain tests, in the sense that she was taking a group of young men or a group of children and trying to get information on certain significant things, like what were the childhood dreams. You also must have had, what was your favorite childhood dream when you used to go to sleep? What was the favorite childhood dream? Seppan? Emma? Yen driver, lorry driver. So you wanted to be a driver. So you always used to think that, okay, I would drive, kind of a thing. Anything else? Anything interesting? Any childhood dream right from the back, sir? Any favorite childhood dream other than that fairy tale of she should come and meet you, kind of? I'll tell you my dream. Those were the days when we used to read Chandamama, Balamitra. No? There is a gradual process. Mundu Chandamama, Balamitra. And then Tintin untundi. Tintin tarvata Chandamama, Balamitra. Tarvata Vipula Chatura. ఆ మధ్యలోనేమో స్వాతి వస్తుంది. Or Swati is the much bigger one. So it's like if you are reading Swati when you are there in the primary school, meaning that you are doing something very wrong. So those were the times in which we lived. But then abhi to children have everything at the click of a button. They know so much which the parents do not know. That's the reason why children now say, "Mummy, aapko to kuch pata hi nahi hai." Truly, we don't know anything. They know so much. I was talking about my very favorite dream of the time. So behind Chandamama, there used to be this Cadbury chocolate advertisement, where chocolate flows in the waterfall. So whenever I used to get dreams, these are those dreams. I would climb the waterfall, have so much of chocolate from there, kind of a thing. Childhood dreams was one that Dubov was examining. The dream tells you your personality. And second was ink blot test. And she was analyzing the children's art What you draw is a manifestation of what goes on there. You need not be a great artist for somebody to tell about your personality from what you're drawing. Extempore drawing. So similar kind of several tests that she was conducting. And what she would do was, so from the same child, these 4, 5, 6 categories of information she takes. From the same young man, she takes all these categories of information. She would segregate. Suppose she's taking 10 children or 10 young men. From those 10 young men, all these 5, 6 categories she's accumulating. And she would send this information to 5, 6 different analysts. Meaning all the dreams related information she will send to one fellow. All, the other kind of painting she would send to somebody. And she would ask those individuals, those analysts, to give the personality traits of these children or the young fellows. She never expected that this would happen. But what she got was, from all these 5, 6 different analysts, from 5, 6 different kinds of sources, when they are analyzing and concluding on the personality of an individual, she surprisingly got the same kind of feedback from all these fellows about this one individual. In fact, she could not explain how. Sometimes we can't explain how. How did you pass the exam? We don't know. But then we start giving lectures on how to pass the exam. Many times these are surprises actually, or shocks rather. You alone know that you are shocked with your result. Yourself and God alone knows. But then once you have passed the exam, whatever you say, that's more than a Veda for the fellow who is trying to write the exam. It's a very surprising thing. But then she says that this is what is model personality, which we can establish with statistical and test-related data. When we can confirm, there is no better fact than this, no better research than that. Sir, in the entire anthropology, I'll have to say this to you. If possible, on this Saturday, based on the availability of the lecture hall, because Monday I'm not available. As Monday I'm not available, I was trying to take a class on Saturday and Sunday if possible. One of those lectures will be, which I am going to deal with, is Introduction to Biological Anthropology. How to approach various things, what are the things that you'll have to study kind of a thing, what kind of questions, what kind of answers that you'll have to write. So that is going to be a special lecture on biological anthropology. That's how things are. So she was trying to give based on statistical data, etc. Linton was there like Smith and Perry. But Linton was doing his own kinds of other works. His favorite area of study was status and role. That's one other thing that I wanted to talk today. A brief idea I wanted to give you. The status and role. A basic understanding. Status is where exactly you are in the society. Suppose there is a fourfold organization in Indian society. We call Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Sudra. Suppose you are there at, say, a Vaishya position. That is the status you are holding. The place where you are existing in the society, we call it a status. I am not giving several formal definitions there. A role is based on your status position, the duties that are ordained for you. If we are looking at the Hindu terminology, we call dharma, that is ordained for you to be performed when you are there at one particular position. There is a role specificity for a particular status. Linton was examining in different culture groups that he was visiting whether status and the role of the individuals and the groups are static and how they are changing. I think this comes very close to study of Indian social system in anthropology syllabus for us. How the status is being fixed and how role specificity is. When status is changing, is the role changing? Can the status be changed? Can the status be changed? And if status is changing, is our role changing? Or can we keep the status static and change the role? Are you following my questions? For example, if I mention something like a Varna, the fourfold classification of Indian society, it is static. It doesn't change. In the Varna hierarchy, you cannot make Shudra sit at the level of Brahman. Brahman is the superior fellow, then comes Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. That is static. And you are giving certain roles to them. Are you following? It is here that I actually would want to talk about some of the Kshatriya communities who are actually not Kshatriya, but because they became rulers, they became Kshatriyas. In the television serials, when we see this, Mahabharata, Ramayana and several others, Kautilya kind of things when we were watching, some men used to come with Surya and Chandra here, indicating that I come from Surya Vamsa and Chandra Vamsa. These are no Vamsas at all. We know that it is practically not possible for him to leave his job, come here, do the stuff and go. Not really possible. Just because Kunti one fine day she believed that okay, oh wow, then wow అనగానే జరిగిపోతే ఇంకేముంది. The story goes like this. You must have studied in history. I don't know whether I am right or not, but you must have come across this statement. It is generally said that post-Guptas we don't have many true Kshatriyas. Post-Guptas we don't have many true Kshatriyas. These are all pseudo-Kshatriyas. What might be happening is that somebody who is not a Kshatriya, he became a ruler. How does that happen? See, Kshatriyas have this practice of giving grants. मुझे तुमने खुश कर दिया, चलो ले लो, ये भी ले लो, ये भी ले लो. You started giving villages as grants. You started giving regions as grants. And this Brahmin fellow, or the Vaishya fellow, whoever it is, he was busy accumulating what you were giving and storing it. You were busy giving, he was busy looting. And he became much bigger power than what you are. But then in all mannerisms, he shows that he is subservient to you. The man who knows how to live. So one fine day, he has so much of a land that he is ruling. He can actually summon a Brahmin. He can summon a Brahmin and ask him to write a Vamsavriksha, a lineage tree for him, tracing your ancestry to Surya or Chandra. A Brahmin can do that. You wanted to get married in an urgency. Muhurtalu levandi, pettanడి mastaru, pettanడి. Muhurtam will be there. Brahmin can do wonders. Because he is the representative between gods and the humans. He alone can talk to the gods from on the behalf of you. So don't get me wrong, sir. If any Brahmins, I am respectfully saying all this. So, what is happening there? Status is not changing, role is changing. Initially, what is happening? Status is not changing, role is changing. But when role is changing, there is a possibility of changing your status. In Varna, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, that is static, it doesn't change. But an individual can change his status. The status of Brahmin doesn't change. The status of Kshatriya doesn't change. But the individual can change his status. You may be today a Kshatriya, tomorrow you may be a Brahmin, the day after tomorrow you may be a Shudra. Based on the role that you are performing. But in the case of caste, if you observe, your status doesn't change, but your role may change. You might be a lowly caste, but you are changing your role. You are no more a farmer, but then you are actually into some kind of a higher activity. Your caste doesn't change, meaning that the status doesn't change. The examination done by Linton is across the societies that he was studying. Is it that status and role are static, or when one changes, whether the other changes? What is the possibility of changing? This is another kind of study of social change. So, if a question like social change occurs, study of social change in anthropology, there are various ways that you can be mentioning there. This is one of them that is done by Linton. That is his original work. The other work that he was doing was assisting his teacher, Kroeber, in writing about basic personality. Sometimes I feel that maybe the student is doing much more credible work than what the master was doing. Right. Contributions of Gardiner. Contributions of Gardiner. He was best known for right in quotes, psychodynamic approach, which meant that study of culture and personality as interdependent entities. He introduced a concept of basic personality, in his book, right in quotes, The Psychological Frontier of Society. The Psychological Frontier of Society. To explain the interaction between culture and personality, Gardiner divided social institutions into primary and secondary institutions. Primary institutions are those which directly influence socialization practices and childhood experiences. These are significant in the creation of basic personality that might be commonly held by a large number of individuals, in the culture group under study. Aspects such as traditions, type of family, marriage systems, education, economic subsistence, were placed under primary institutions by Gardiner. The secondary institutions include belief systems, religion, mythology, folklore, political and legal organizations, etc. These institutions seek to satisfy the needs and deal with the stresses and frictions created by primary institutions. The secondary institutions are shaped by the basic personality of the society. Right, in the next paragraph. Any change in the primary institutions results in a corresponding change in the basic personality that is in turn reflected in secondary institutions. Critics pointed at the classification of institutions into primary and secondary. Gardiner's classification was mostly due to the study among Marquis' society. I'm not repeating the whole thing from there that you have seen in yesterday's class. Keep writing, the next one. Contributions of Cora Dubo. Contributions of Cora Dubo. She was best known for her study of the people of Alor, A-L-O-R, the people of Alor in Indonesia. In this study, she developed the concept of model personality. The concept of model personality, which refers to the most prevalent personality features found in the culture group that can be arrived at through scientific techniques and statistically measurable data. Among the Alor, she collected traditional ethnographic data and data from popular biographies, dreams, children's drawings, ink blot test, etc., and submitted her findings to different specialists for interpretation. For example, information from biographies was analyzed by Gardiner, ink blot test was studied by Auer-Hauser, and dreams were analyzed by Trude, Trude. Each of the specialists was blind or ignorant of the other ongoing experiments, and all of them arrived at the same conclusions she found that the Aller Society had certain personality traits, such as suspicion, insecurity, jealousies, and belief in magical practices. Compared to other culture personality scholars, her results invited less criticisms. Right in the next paragraph. In general, culture personality school was criticized for number one, Benedict and Mead using smaller samples, and the samples being non-representative of the culture group. Secondly, they could not account for the diversity of personalities found in the same culture group. Thirdly, other than Dubos, the rest of the thinkers had no proper statistical validation and were primarily trying to gather evidences to prove that their hypothesis was true. Fourthly, Gardner's scheme was criticized for using a generalization from one single study. And he did not explain the factors that shape primary institutions. Fifthly, in the case of Dubos in particular, In the case of Dubois in particular, it is held that the assumption that childhood experiences determine adult personality to prove this point, one has to perform longitudinal studies on the same person throughout his life. In the case of Benedict, continue in the same point. In the case of Benedict, in the case of Margaret Mead, when she proposes that enculturation influences personalities, she should have substantiated with such longitudinal studies to prove the point. Right, another point. With regard to Benedict, thinkers like Freeman provided criticism by conducting parallel studies in the same society of Samoa. Any problem? What did I say? Oh, I am so sorry. Please make a change. With regard to Mead, thinkers like Freeman provided criticism by conducting parallel studies in the same society of Samoa. Keep writing there. Freeman wrote an article, that is, critique of Mead's coming of age in Samoa. Wherein he found that fantasies of adolescent girls were accepted by Mead. To be true without appropriate cross-checking. Right, in the next line. Nevertheless, psychological anthropologists can be credited for exploring a new approach of understanding culture. They introduced new research tools of content analysis method, and national character studies, that are of contemporary significance, and have shown a new direction for anthropological fieldwork. That is about your... Sir, I will be sending one article to you today about Ralph Linton that you can add to the note. Write your planner. Sir, on the test, regarding the test on 22nd, you will be having the syllabus up to culture personality. So whatever schools that you have finished till culture personality and the tribal profiles, I won't repeat this, please note down somewhere. From tomorrow everybody would be coming to me, what for the test, so write down. All the schools up to culture personality, including neo-ethnographic. And you will be studying tribal profiles so that you'll be prepared for any kind of question. One was Toda, the other was Jarawa. So let me also say this. Some questions can be picked up from the general talk that we had during the classes. Now later you can't say that in anthropological thought this topic was not good. Anything that I must have said anyway. So this was the 14th class that you had. You were largely writing today. You were only taking the dictation on culture personality school. Culture personality school. So the source is, one is the notes that you have taken today plus the mail topic number 2. One also I will send today. Mail topic 1 is actually a general write-up about all the schools. The second topic will be Ralph Linton. Few others also I will be sending in a day or two, but mail number 2. Yeah. Have a great time. See you.